Welcome back to another review of Series 6 of Black Mirror, which has just dropped on Netflix. This review will focus on feature-length episode 3, Beyond the Sea, which is another very strong episode in my opinion. Quite a lengthy one, coming in at 90 minutes runtime, but the character development and writing were absolutely spot on again. I've been thoroughly impressed with the episodes that I've been covering on the channel so far, but just some spoiler-free cliff notes of my thoughts for those of you who haven't watched Beyond the Sea yet. The episode is based in an alternative reality during 1969, where two astronauts have the technology available to them to be able to return to Earth in a replica of their original bodies. This allows them to complete the work they need to do on the spacecraft without being stuck up in space for years at a time. Beyond the Sea takes on a variety of tonalities ranging from horror all the way to romance, and this is the benefit of a longer runtime. You can really flesh out your narrative more as you move through the different thematic phases in the show, which has been nailed here. Additionally, the setting of the late 60s is brilliant. The colour palette feels very authentic, and you do genuinely feel like you're in that time period. So there's absolutely nothing there that's immersion breaking at all. So I highly recommend that you do go and watch this episode if you haven't already, before returning to this review for my thoughts and opinions on key plot details. As always, this is your spoiler warning, and don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel, The Horror Exchange. Let's get into it. So the episode follows David, played by Josh Hartnett, who has a young family in California, and Cliff, who is played by Aaron Paul, who has just moved into a rural house in Boston with his wife Lana, who is played by Kate Mara, and young son Henry. Both men are astronauts on a 6-year mission who have the technology available to them to split their time between working in space and living out their lives on Earth with their families, which circumnavigates the obvious drawback for astronauts: they're never at home. I guess it puts a completely different spin on being on call for work, where both David and Cliff have replicas of their bodies on Earth, which are basically machines, while the real versions of them reside in space. In order to travel between Earth and space, both men have something called links, which are beds that they lie on while inserting their identity tags into a slot. Whilst one man is using the link, the other must be active on the space shuttle, and they can signal to each other to return to the spaceship using an alert bracelet on their wrists. Although both men share similar traits in occupation, their characters are very different among their families. David is definitely the more boisterous, all-American type, which has a large house and seems to attract a lot of attention when out and about with his family. And the drawback of this is his wife sees a strange looking camper van with the curtains draped across the street from their mansion. Cliff, on the other hand, lives in the middle of nowhere in Boston. There's not a lot of chat that goes on in his house, and he doesn't seem to have the same emotional connection with his wife, which David has. For example, David gives his wife the full service and MOT after a night at the movies to the song La Mer, the original French version of popular song Beyond the Sea. Cliff just seems to shut the light off and go to sleep at night. The episode really kicks into high gear when David is using the link and has gone to bed. He's woken up in the middle of the night to a noise downstairs, and upon further investigation discovers 4 hippie home invaders in his living room. He tries to scare them off with a bat, but they don't leave and end up tying him up. The leader of the gang is Kappa, played by Rory Culkin, who is actually Macaulay Culkin's brother. There's a little bit of trivia for you. They're obsessed with the fact that David is a machine and that his existence isn't right in nature. A man sleeps in the sky while his mechanical image walks the earth. Kappa is the obvious antagonist for the episode, and he rounds up David's family, chops his arm off, to which we see there's only this silvery liquid inside of him, and then smashes him on the head with a hammer, which jolts him back into space again. When he quickly returns, Kappa has killed his family, smeared their blood on the walls, and then he sets fire to David's replica, destroying it and essentially trapping him in space. By marrying up the fact that they're hippies and it's the late 60s in California where David's based, I guess this is a nod to Charles Manson's movement, but in an alternative universe. But this creates the premise of the episode and coincides with its name, Beyond the Sea. Many people believe that the song centres around two lovers who have been separated from each other, whilst others believe it's about longing for something beyond one's world, which also fits into the narrative later on. David is trapped, but the shuttle still has one link in full use: Cliff's link. Cliff finds David whimpering in a corner of the ship, clearly distressed at the situation, and Cliff discusses with his wife about letting David use his link just the once, just to breathe in some proper air and get off the ship for a while. Also, it's discussed that if David does something stupid, like ending his own life, Cliff will also die because the ship needs 2 people to operate it. At this point, I pretty much called what the twist was going to be, but that didn't matter. The writing was so strong that just waiting for the inevitable got my heart rate elevated. The next day, David uses Cliff's link and heads into the forest with Lana, where he breaks down in tears as she consoles him. It's a very emotionally charged scene, which was extremely well acted. Once back on the ship, David explains this to Cliff and shows him a drawing that he did from memory, which he states helps him with the trauma. He asks Cliff if he can draw a picture of his house as a thank you for letting him use his link. Obviously, this means using his link again, and I straight away knew that this was going to get a little bit dodgy going forward. They agree a 1 hour a week rule where he can use that time to paint the house. It's clear to see that David and Lana have a deeper emotional connection than Cliff and Lana. They both like reading, he gets close and personal whilst encouraging Lana to paint, and they enjoy the same kind of music as well. I think what's really clever about the writing is the second that David uses the link to go back to space, Cliff uses the link to go back to Earth. So essentially Lana is receiving an almost instantaneous comparison between the 2 men, seeing firsthand their contrasting personalities. Once back on the ship, David begins to secretly draw pictures of Lana to further support their growing connection, and the next time he uses the link, he drives Cliff's car with Lana to the local town to pick up some painting accessories. He's basically just hijacking Cliff's life at this point, and I can only imagine the confusion that's brewing in Lana's head. It's a husband that she's staring at, but he has a very different personality, a more compatible personality. This peaks when he dances with Lana in the barn, again to the tune La Mer, or Beyond the Sea, the same song which he got rather close to his late wife to earlier in the episode. In this instance, the song is symbolic of Lana being something that is beyond David's world and completely unobtainable. After Lana feels uncomfortable and rejects him, she tells Cliff that evening that he hit Henry, their son, and she doesn't want him to come back again. This scene was a bit weird for me because Cliff isn't massively bothered that David has physically hurt his son, but then again, it is the late 60s, so child line didn't really exist at this point. They agree once again to let David return and finish the painting, but while he's in the link, Cliff discovers naked drawings that David has of his wife. Naturally, it all hit the fan when David returns, things turn physical, and Cliff puts a final stop to David ever using his link again. A few days pass, and both men seem to be back to operating in a civil manner, at least on a professional level. David sends Cliff an emergency message requiring him to go outside the airlock to fix a part of the ship. Now, this is where I got tripped up by typical Black Mirror red herrings. The radio goes silent and Cliff is outside, and I thought for sure that David had locked him out and he was going to use the link permanently to live in the body of Cliff and have Lana all to himself, pretending. Oh boy, I was wrong on this one. The airlock door is reopened, and as Cliff puts his clothes back on, he notices that David has his identity tag in his pocket. In a fit of panic, Cliff jumps back in the link to find his wife and son murdered with blood smeared all over the walls. If David can't have his own family or Lana, then no one can. For the most part, I kinda knew where the story was going. I knew David was going to grow obsessed with Lana, and I thought they would have some sort of secret relationship where personalities and bodies are crossed, a little bit like Striking Vipers, for example, but I didn't see the brutal murder coming at the climax. So in terms of the twist, Beyond the Sea gets a massive thumbs up from me. Although I could anticipate most of the plot, the writing and acting were so good that my adrenaline was pumping anyway as everything played out. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Have I nailed it? Or was there another hidden motive behind David's actions? As always, I've been your host Hugh from Unleash the Ghouls. Don't forget to subscribe to the Horror Exchange, and I'll see you in the next one.